You are listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast, hosted by Tom Baker. Thank you for listening. Your position has been triangulated. Drone Army has been dispatched to your location. Commencing attack run in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to the Bravo Creative Podcast, and thank you so very much for listening. The Bravo Creative Podcast is being delivered to you by way of all of your favorite podcast platforms, and it is linked directly from the www.bravocreative.net/Bravo Podcast webpage. Visit the Bravo Creative Podcast Facebook page and like and subscribe and share and all that good stuff. And I've really enjoyed the personal messages from all of you, and I thank you for, number one, taking the time to listen to the show, and number two, taking the time to send me these cool little messages and giving me the encouragement. And much love to all of you. We've got a little different show for you today, primarily because of all the new and exciting things that have been happening in my life and in our life and stuff that's going around town. And it's been really busy, but it's been awesome. And I wanted to bring my lovely wife back onto the show to just talk about how we've had to, on a personal level, navigate and make decisions on just life in general, because everything for us pretty much in the last 3 to 4 months has just changed entirely. And the thing is we've had to have equal parts of creativity and hard work over the course of those last few months, which is a big part of the overall theme of this show. So I thought it may be helpful and maybe somewhat entertaining for you, my listening audience. And I'll just say this: I've really been blessed to have a spouse that will take an active part in just my growth and in my journey. And I know that it's never easy to have to listen to all the ups and downs that I put myself through, but I wouldn't be where I'm at without her. So without further ado, I would love to welcome to the show the loverly, the talented, the motivator of my life, my wife, my partner in crime, Michelle Baker. Sweetie, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I like the loverly, kind of like a homage to My Fair Lady a little
loverly.
bit.
So, and I want to get right to it, because as soon as we're finished recording this episode, where are we headed?
We are headed to the
Parts
beautiful.
unknown.
Are we leaving it unknown?
Yeah, we'll leave it unknown
Okay.
for now. Yeah.
But yes,
We're
are
going
gonna
on
have
vacation.
some family time.
Yes.
Which is much needed, even though in the last couple of years, it seems like we should have had a lot of family time, but
Yeah.
it seems like things have kind of gotten to a hectic pace here in the last couple months. And I don't know if I'm just not used to the pace anymore because of the break that we had, or if it's really just as hectic as I think it is. But
You mean like the COVID break?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of the whole law of inertia, whatever is in motion stays in motion, whatever, you have to have energy to force
It's true.
something to get back going.
Yep.
And and if you're not used to going, it takes double the force to get that rock going again, or whatever, whatever mass you want to do.
I mean, it really does.
I only know this because our kids are in junior high and they've been tested over it. Otherwise, I'm not the science person.
I think the other biggest thing is that we've basically been upended in what we kind of got ourselves used to over the course of the last 3 years, and then all of a sudden, like February, the whole game changed for us. We had new house, which is a lot of work. It's been
it is. It's a dream come true, but it's a lot of work. And
then you changed jobs.
Correct.
Didn't change professions, but you changed companies, and that was a big adjustment. It still is a big adjustment for you.
Yeah.
New ways of doing things, and talk about that a little bit, because you've had a struggle probably over the course of the last 3 months with just different things that have been going on, and then trying to balance kids in school and
Absolutely. Well, I think anyone that has ever had a home office, like worked from home, and probably a lot more people have context for that after the last couple of years, is having that type of work situation. It is very much a mental game of staying focused, but also staying positive, and also having to juggle having everybody in one house, knowing you have everything going on with them, but you have to work, and also just not having those coworkers that you kind of vent to and then you release some of that frustration. It ends up being your spouse.
yeah.
Or your kids or your dog. Sometimes I do talk to the dogs. I'm not too proud to say that.
Yeah.
But it is a mental game. And but I have been used to working from home, so that was a positive thing. But
You
whenever
just weren't used to having us all here and having that much more stimulus kind of
It's true.
floating around the house at all times.
Yeah. Usually when you're at full bore, and we're kind of getting back into it, to be honest with you, we're usually on different schedules. Like I'm starting to get used to editing Tom again, which is like nocturnal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
usually we're not in the office at the same time. I'm there during the day, and you start gearing up when I'm like, my brain is shutting down.
Yeah.
I can't do the night thing, and you just love it, especially when you're editing. But then during the day,
Well, I'm basically combating the thing that because I cannot like block out the stimulus.
Right.
I actually have a somewhat of a
Yes.
mental condition to not block out stimulus. So that's, for me, working in the evenings is, for the last however many years that I've been doing this, that's been my solace, is in
Right.
the evening when everything's quiet. It's just no distractions. There's no phone calls. There's nobody usually texting you. There's no kids coming downstairs. And you are fast asleep
I
by
am
then.
fast asleep or close to it.
You do not, and have not ever since the children have been born,
Yeah.
has not burnt a lot of the midnight oil.
No.
So I've been able to use that time to harness my special powers into the evening. But we've had, as far as, prior to COVID, we had a pretty busy schedule. We had stuff
did.
going on all the time. I was working on my projects, you were working on that, and everything worked pretty good. And then all of a sudden we upended ourselves, picked a house on 10 acres out in the middle of nowhere, and there was another whole section of our life that we had no idea that we were capable of, and that is the wonderful world of yard work, basically.
Right.
And it's been great. I've really enjoyed having this kind of fortress of solitude out here, as it were, but it comes at a very heavy cost of yard work.
Yeah. But I think, from a lot of our friends out here and neighbors, I think you just have to pick your battles. And
You definitely
choose.
concede a lot to Mother Nature. Yeah.
Yes, it's just we're not very good at picking our battles. We kind of like to tackle all of it.
We're still operating as if we live in a subdivision.
And you
out
know
here
what? Maybe
sometimes.
this is a life lesson for us. Maybe this
Yeah.
is part of what we're going through. But yeah, just a lot. And you know what? There's things that were hard. They're getting easier because we've worked them out. We've figured them out. But you don't realize that you take them for granted.
Yeah.
Like great internet service.
That has been a very
Tough one.
interesting process to navigate while being out here. Is
Right.
how do you stay connected? When we first moved out here, there was hardly any internet out here. Or we
We didn't
hadn't-
really even have cell phone service.
Yeah. So we had to swap cell phones out. We finally
Yes.
solved that piece of the puzzle, and then after that, we were able to lock into
Right.
an internet provider that would actually work out here, which has been great. Total high speed, which we'd heard a lot
Yeah.
of really
patchy. Well, I don't know. Just different comments from different people. But you hear that about everyone. Like, I don't think you hear one company, they're like, this one's the best.
Right.
Everyone's got a negative thing to say.
Well, the fact of the matter is like, we heard from a lot of people that you couldn't get internet service out in the country.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is you just have to pay for it. And we spend a pretty good amount a month for internet service out here. And it's pretty good internet service actually that we get. I think we just experienced that we'd been throttled because we got very excited about having internet after not having it for about a month. But this isn't a plug for Total High Speed internet service out of Nixa, Missouri, but they have worked for us very well since we had them. And which was surprising because we thought kind of all hope was lost on that.
Right.
Until Starlink
That's
shows
what I was
up.
going to say. If anyone, is deciding to make the move and want to know what options are out there, I think we know all of them.
We do.
We have, I would say you have vetted all of them. I kind of left that in your hands because I knew what I was going to be good at and what I wasn't going to be good at. And that was one of those things.
Yeah, we know
not gonna be good
we
at,
know the
so.
ones that don't work and the ones that do. And if you want to private message me, I can go through all of those. I won't do them on here, but
Not what this podcast's about.
I won't bore you with it.
And Verizon has been a great carrier.
Yeah, we switched to Verizon,
outside
which
of
we had
town.
AT&T, and Verizon's been awesome out here.
But in all fairness, AT&T, we really hadn't had any issues with them. It's just the coverage was not
Where we were at.
that great. So anyway, you learn how to deal with it. And I think we are getting some of those kinks worked out, which has been nice, but it just takes time. It takes time to figure it out. And we were the smart people that just decided to do it all at one time because, hey, just rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it all at once, which we've kind of had that pattern in our life. Our kids are 21 months apart, we've kind of just done that before. And it is sound advice, but you will not come out unscathed.
Yeah, you're going to be
Put it that way.
You're going to be bloody and you're going to be bruised up, and it's going to cost some money to do it.
But it will be done.
But it will be done, and you can get back to the business of, making money or staying busy or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we'll talk more about that whole process here in a second.
But to answer your original question, it's been interesting transitioning to a new job. It's not a new career, but
And to remind everyone, you are a physician recruiter. So
I am. I'm a healthcare provider recruiter nationwide. Even little things like my company is based out of California now, where it used to be based out of Texas, and just switching time zones. So having to deal with people on Pacific time zone and all of that, dealing with different cultures, like corporate cultures, dealing with different expectations, and also having in your mind old expectations that you have to go, okay, am I overreacting to this because of what actually is, or the context that I've come from and what's in my mind?
Well, let's face it,
gets
when you've
into
been
it.
doing a job, you've been doing this profession for over 20 years now.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, just about.
And you've been a physician recruiter of some fashion for the last 20 years. And so you go into a brand new company and they're going to have a different way to do things. And it's kind of trying to figure out, navigating, is this something that I hold on to, or is this something that I just slowly modify or adapt to something else? And that's
Sure.
got to be difficult.
It is.
It
but
is difficult. I can see it being difficult.
Well, I mean, you hear it when it's difficult, unfortunately. Welcome to be married to me.
Well, yeah.
Like I said, when you don't have those coworkers around, sometimes your spouse ends up being that sounding board on both sides,
For better, for worse.
for better, for worse.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, I kind of have to remind myself that I am getting a paycheck and I am working for a company. And I mean, and that has been really good for our family and
Sure.
what you do. But I always have those moments where I think, man, doing all this work without that paycheck would be tough. And I think that's where I sympathize for you and for a lot of people listening to this podcast that are trying to work out, you know, how do I take a career in videography, filmmaking, acting, editing, whatever in this industry and make it what I do to pay the grocery bills and what I do to like pay everything and be that full time.
Well, and I mean, it's, you know, we had this conversation the other day is that, and this is the difficult part of being a freelancer or owning your own business is that we focus so much time. And I liken it to what audio is in a film. You focus so much time on your camera and your setup and your actors and your script and you know, your production value and all this kind of stuff. And the little redheaded stepchild is audio because it's the one thing that a lot of people just don't understand or they have never really taken the time to understand it. But it's an essential part of a film, even if it's a silent film and it has music, it's an essential part of any type of film that we do. And it's an essential part of a stage production. Your audio, the way you project, you know, the way the microphones are set up, the speakers, it's very important, but it always gets put to the wayside. And another one of those things that gets put to the wayside is the sales of your product. Mm-hmm. Like for you, for example, your product is your ability to navigate all of the ins and outs of finding a physician and getting them in. But you don't have to mess with any of the sales because you have like
I have Rich Kirky. Shout out to Rich. You're going to put him in the notes.
I'll put Rich in the notes. And Rich is a hell of a guy. I love him to death. And he's been a major part of the success of our family over the course of the last few years, just by his guidance and just being a friend. But that's and
he's an amazing salesperson.
He is. The guy can sell ketchup popsicles to people with white gloves and
in a hospital.
And the thing that is a very important and crucial part of running your business. If you are a freelancer, if you're an actor, if you're, you know, a cinematographer, whatever, it's how you present yourself, how you sell yourself. And unfortunately for me, I'm decent if I'm just selling something. I was actually a fairly decent salesman. The problem is when I'm trying to sell myself.
Right. Becomes completely different.
You try to be a little too humble.
Right.
And you sell yourself short. And I've been told that a few times here lately. And that from a...
But then again, you don't want to be braggadocious. You know, you
don't want to be too braggadocious, but you also have to respect
such a fine line.
Yeah, you have to respect your time. You have to respect your time with your family. You have to protect that because people will come up to you and go, "Oh, hey, you're worth $1 an hour."
Right.
And you have to kind of push against that and say, "No, I'm actually worth $50 an hour."
Well, as you get older, you go, I'll pay you $1 to have my hour back.
Right.
Your time becomes more valuable.
Well, and when you don't get paid for 40 hours a week of work,
right,
that becomes, you get paid 40 hours a week, basically.
It usually ends up being much more than that.
It's much more than that, right? But the point is, and this is something that I have been dealing with a few of my listeners out there. I've had some conversations with people, is that there is and I'm going to try to navigate this as best I can, but there's been a lot of people that have been working on film sets and in productions that we're getting undervalued. We get undervalued from other businesses out there. Hey, can you do this project for me for free? How much does it cost to do that? And there's a fine line between going, yeah, I'll do this to help you, or I'll do this because I want to work on the project. I really want to work on that project. And we've had to kind of navigate that of whether we go, hey, this is a project that I work on because obviously it could help me meet people and get me onto projects. Networking.
They're networking.
Yeah. To get me onto bigger projects.
Right.
Or do you do it because you want to devalue your product, which is, videography or editing or,
which is something that's always amazed me because not everybody can do this. I mean, even you just setting up this podcast, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people listening to this right now going, I could do that. But
yeah.
I could not do that, and I even have a very peripheral knowledge from living with you, but the industry is so technology based now that it's a very specialized set of skills. The fun part, quote unquote, the performance part, although I'm not downgrading the performance part by any means, but there's always the fun part of a project. And then where do you go from there to get it done? And that requires everyone contributing their skills to get this big project together. And it's always amazed me how many things have to fit together to get a film project done.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, and we've talked about this a lot, is that a film project, and we'll stay on film just for a second, just because it's kind of what we have based it all off of. A film project is inherently, the process is impossible to excruciatingly difficult in and of itself. It's super duper. It's a ton of time. And what ultimately happens is you try to get in a crew or a group of people that have certain sets of skills that can come in and work together and work on it. And we have some groups out there that work great together because people know their lane. They know where they can put their level of expertise in things, and the process gets done relatively quickly and relatively well. By the time it's done, you have a B or to a B plus product, right?
Right.
And then you have these other projects out there that people butt heads on it and they don't get it done, or they skip steps and things like that. It never gets done. So it's rife with the potential to have something go wrong at every turn of the journey. It can go wrong. And it's amazing to see, like for example, like Thomas Tuberville's been working on that Aging Predators film with David Watson. And there's been, those two have been the mainstays, and Chad Bianco has been on there. And my guest last week, Valerie Bates, was on that film. So there are people that have been going through the slog every single week. They've been filming for weeks on weeks on weeks.
Yeah.
To try to get through that. And from the footage that you see, and from everything that you see with it, it's going to be a great film. I know it's a great script. I've read it, but that script took a long time to make. It had a group of people that helped write it, and then there's another group that comes in. And there's so many elements.
Pre-production, and then the production piece, and then you haven't even started the post-production.
Right.
So it is such
so many
a
elements.
long project, and there's so many ways it can twist and turn and go wrong and get derailed. And really, unless you are 100% committed, don't you feel like once the projects get derailed and delayed a little bit, it's almost like the fun part's over?
Yeah.
And
the scary part happens.
It's kind of, now you've got to do something with it.
Yeah.
And
we see that. We've seen it before too, even with my own projects and other projects that I've helped with.
oh, sure, you've got stuff on a hard drive.
Yeah, because there comes a point where you have all the pieces put together, and then you put it together and it doesn't match what your expectation is,
In your head.
or you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Right.
And you go, you know what, we just have to make this work. And it becomes very difficult. It becomes very hard. There's a lot, and then there's still more elements that have to be added in. And that's one of the things that Shannon Michelle and I, who was a previous guest, her and I have been in numerous talks with a couple of different places. We have an announcement that we're hopefully going to be able to announce. My goal is to announce it next week.
You've made it public now.
I've made it public a couple times. I've softballed this thing. I've softballed this thing a couple of times, but I just want to make sure that it is 100% legit and locked in before we do anything. I think it's going to be a super exciting thing for us to have around here. It's going to be a great learning experience for us, but it delves into, and I'll go back because my really good friend, Mickey Stone, if you haven't listened to the Mickey Stone podcast, there's a really good clue as to what we're doing in the Mickey Stone podcast, which I think is like episode 3.
I think that was the light bulb episode.
It was the light bulb episode
The
because
light bulb went off.
It just kind of, and then talking with guests after that, it reiterated the idea that we needed to have something like this. And there's a lot of places that do these. We don't have one in Springfield, and we're going to do one. And that's the hope. I got to get the details ironed out.
Yes.
We're really close.
And I think what also goes towards that is when you have a deadline that you have to meet, there's a reason why creatives are very, for the most part, not to put people in categories, but very deadline driven, is because they need that deadline. You know, when you're in a...
Successful creatives are deadline driven.
Yes.
Creatives that are not deadline driven are not very successful. That would be a causality correlation that I've seen.
You need that stress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when in some ways it's a blessing when you do a live play or musical that the dates are marketed. They're out there.
Oh yeah.
So there's many times when I've done a show that about halfway through, I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to happen. I mean, really, I don't. And it does. It all comes together because it has to.
Yeah.
Because you have to. And there's no getting around it.
It's like whenever I did Race. Remember, I did Race at the Contemporary Theater, and I mean, I think I was on stage. I think it was like 70 some odd pages of lines.
That was a monster of a script.
And I got like halfway through, and I realized that the date was soon approaching. Mm-hmm. That number one, I needed to be off book, but number two, that we were going to be on stage and performing this thing in front of a live audience. And I remember me and Genova, I think we spent just about every single day at the theater for a couple weeks. And I mean, we just went over it nonstop.
There is this little bit of a tangent, but there's nothing like memorizing a script, because at the beginning you think there's no way. You see like 50 pages of dialogue and you're like, there is no way.
Yeah.
How am I going to remember this? And then by the end, when you get to the show, it's almost like it's locked into long-term memory, and you get up there and it just comes out.
Yeah.
But then after a couple months later, you will remember the oddest parts of it, and then you will not remember the rest of it.
I still remember my monologue from that show,
works.
and I don't know how it is either. I think it comes from a place of fear, and it comes from a place of just a muscle memory repetition that just kind of pops. It's just, I think sometimes it's the same as singing. You know, it's like getting one of those earworms that just, it's a song that just keeps going through your head.
I don't know if there's any other, theater people that have had this like reoccurring nightmare, but I have this dream every once in a while. I'm sure it's stress induced, but it's like all of a sudden somebody grabs me by the arm and it's like, Michelle, we need you to be in this show that I've done in the past. I've actually done. And
we're taking it on the road.
Yeah. We need you to be that part again. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can do that. And they're like, okay, you're on in an hour. And I'm like, whoa, No. That is not locked in anymore, guys.
Well,
It's been a decade or so.
you know, the same thing
It's not
happened to me
there.
whenever I did Best Little Whorehouse in Texas
Oh, that's true.
in January because just because of weather and things like that. The show, I was literally there for like 2 weeks, and I had not had ample enough
Well, that
rehearsals.
was
But
your own doing.
it was. But so to give you a background, we did the show Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. This was like 8 years ago.
I did
We
musical
it.
direction. And
Michelle
you were
was music
on
director, and I
stage.
played the sheriff in it. And it's not a huge part. There's a song. There's a lot of lines. There's a lot of
It's
stuff.
a
on
nice part. It's not too much,
it. Yes,
but it has good little pieces that are juicy.
It was literally it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare that I have had in the past where I come back to do this show and I've got to learn the lines really quickly, and I got to get back in and get my singing voice because I have a solo in it. I got to get my singing voice back into shape, and it was tough. But then within a week, and I'm not kidding, within a week, I think I counted it was 6 days. Within 6 days, I had the show memorized because I had my muscle memory kicked back in. And I remember, like, I've got this really long monologue at the end of the show.
Right.
And I mean, it was just like all of a sudden one night I just said, all right, I'm putting the book down and I'm just going to wing it.
And it's also one of those monologues, I think, if I remember it, just because I did the musical direction for it, where there are music cues in the monologue. I believe near the end, maybe.
There's orchestration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Music cues that you start certain parts. And so you either have to be a really great music director and like have it memorized by paraphrase and you're used to that person, or that actor has to pretty much know, okay, I have to say these lines the way this is.
There's a
because
couple
there's
of
some
spots,
cues
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And that makes it even double tough there. But it is a weird thing, your memory, because when I competed vocally, there were songs that I would memorize in different languages. I knew the gist of what I was singing and what different words meant, but people always said, "How do you memorize that? Like, can you just recite it?" I was like, "No, honestly, I'm so nervous before I get on stage that all I do." This was a trick from my vocal teacher in high school. She goes, "Just remember the first line, and then the rest will come to you."
Yeah.
And it's not unlike that scene in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade when he's at that wall and it's illusion, and he just has to
he has to
the
take
leap
a
of faith,
leap of faith. Yeah.
and just step out on what looks like this huge ravine and hope it's there.
Yeah.
And you just get up there and you're like, okay, I know my first line. And you've practiced and rehearsed and memorized. And so it's there. It's somewhere in your mind.
Your subconscious has it
But
memorized
you're
somewhere.
so nervous. You're like, I can't think of all the words right now. And you just start and it all just comes out.
Yep, it does.
It's the craziest thing. Like I said, that's a real big tangent.
I remember the one that I had the worst on was I want to say it was Bye Bye Birdie. I had a song at the very beginning, and I could not.
Every night you doubted yourself.
As soon as I would walk out on stage, or right before, I remember looking down. I always like look at my feet. I'd see the stage lights hitting my feet as I was getting ready to break a leg onto the stage, right? And I would get ready to go out there, and I go. As soon as I walked out there, I was like, I am going to screw this up royally. And I remember as soon as I walked out there and I got out past the leg and I broke the leg, all of a sudden it all
was
just
just
kind
there.
of flooded right back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a matter of your heart rate has to be just right.
Maybe.
And your heart rate and the smell and the feeling and all that and the right music cue all has to hit. And then all of a sudden it's like,
It's just there.
and then you go on autopilot for like 2 hours.
Right.
And then you get done, you're like, holy crap, that was easy. All right, let's do that again.
And everybody's going, how did you memorize all those
Right.
pages?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't tell you. It was just,
Well,
I just did it.
it takes a lot of, it takes total immersion,
Right.
really. I mean, and you've even, what was that? Is it what's his name? Bill Nye. He's an actor. He was the one that was in Pirates of the Caribbean. He had like the squid face. He was in Love Actually.
Yeah. Yes. I think I
Really good
Yeah.
English actor, right?
Yeah. I really
Kind
love
of a
his
character.
movies.
And he was talking about his process of learning a line. And if you go out on YouTube, go out and watch, there's an interview they do with him, and he talks about how he memorizes his lines. And the way that he memorizes his lines is that he starts at the beginning and he reads all the way through to a certain point, and then he starts back over and he does it again. And he does that all morning long. Then he has lunch and he starts it over again, and he reads the whole script, not just his lines. He reads the whole entire script all the way through, and then he starts back over. And he does that, he says, for like, I want to say like a couple weeks. And that's all he does. And then at the end of 2 weeks, he's got all of his lines memorized, but that he doesn't do anything else.
Well, that's his job.
That's
He's
it.
being paid
Right.
to memorize
Yeah.
his lines.
But that's all he does. And his
Right.
his work is the time that he puts into it to read it through
Exactly.
and get good at it. And actually, there is some really good videos out there, and I'll have to find some of these. I need to talk about them one time because they are really good about the process of how they go in and memorize their lines. Because I know there are people that struggle with that. Mm-hmm. I struggle with it in some shows.
I mean, as the older you get, the more you struggle with it too.
Well, and
It's-
I don't know, and here's the thing, and there's a fine line between growing old and having a hard time memorizing lines, and growing old, and I think in some ways we have more things on our plate,
that's true.
and having more things on your plate,
More distractions.
more distractions takes you away. I'm doing a show right now. I've memorized all my music, but I haven't memorized all my lines yet. I would say I'm 3/4 of the way memorized. Now, granted, it's Mamma Mia, and it's not like it's, I'm not quoting Arthur Miller up here, right?
It's digestible.
It's ABBA, right?
I mean, I like Mamma Mia. I'm excited for
I
it.
do too. It's gonna be a fun show. I've got, and that's been, on top of like what we were talking about, all the things going on in our life. I decided to take a show, and I had turned down a show earlier in the spring, and then I was approached about Mamma Mia, and I mean, and there was a part of me too that, because my daughter loves the show,
That's true.
and my mom and dad love the show, and so I kind of felt like maybe it was the right thing,
Right.
Why not use your talent for something like entertain your family, in a way?
Yeah.
And so it felt like it was the right thing to do. And so I did it, and I took it. I'm super happy. It's in Branson, which is a little bit of a drive
It is a
for
drive.
me. But the nice thing about it is, probably the biggest advantage of all of it is that I've got to meet it's like it's like I fell in love with this art form because of the people that I met in that. I mean, obviously I met you, and I've had some very lasting, beautiful relationships with people. And it's been awesome. And so the cool thing is the cast of this production, very quickly, we've gotten very close, and it's been fun. And they're fun rehearsals, which is, it takes some of the pinch off of it,
Right.
and that's been kind of a neat thing. And I will tag a lot of them on this, but the nice thing is they've been very accepting and inclusive to kind of have me come in as this, and I'm a little bit of an outsider. They all know each other. I kind of came in, and that's been fun. It's been super fun.
They're all part of the Branson entertainment scene.
They all. I mean, there's some talent there. I mean, like, I'll just say this about the dancers. Number one, I'm not a dancer. I mean, let's put it this way. I'm not a choreographed dancer. I can go cut a rug out on the dance floor, but when it comes to some like a choreographer telling me what to do, I'm not very good.
You can fake it.
I can fake it, but I'm not very good. And the dancing in this show is amazing. And Jacob Deck, who is the director, he is a choreographer and he is awesome at it. And then the dancers that we have, they look amazing. Aline O'Neill is in it.
Previous guest.
And she's got just beautiful voice. Jennifer Battelle, who's a great actress, local actress that I've worked with on a couple projects. She's in it. And then we have Jen Frost. I don't know Jen super well, but the rehearsals that we've had, she is super talented. She's got a voice of an angel up on stage, so that's going to be awesome. So, it's just it's exciting to do this, but the downside was
the downside is always
the downside is the time one time you were asked one time, how do you make time to do a show? And what was your answer? Do you remember this?
I mean, how long ago was this? Was this on a...
This was a few years ago. This was when we were doing a bunch of them. And I remember somebody came up to you and they were like, and I will never forget your response. You go, you don't make time. You just make it a very important part of whatever you're doing.
Right.
You can't make any more time.
You just make it a priority.
You just make it a priority.
Someone, I need to remember, it was a silly meme or Facebook post. You know how every once in a while one will come along and you're like, wow, that one really resonated. And it was basically, stop saying that you don't have enough time to people. Just tell them it's not a priority. And then you'll really decide what you're spending time on, if it's important in your life.
Well, and that takes us back to pricing yourself correctly.
Right, because time is so valuable.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're saying to your family, you're not a priority. And when you're saying to, you know, paying things that you're not a priority and you're spending that time doing something else, you know, you have to look at things that way. It's not just about taking on another commitment. It's saying to everything else in your life at that moment in time, you're not a priority. This is.
Right.
And sometimes that is the way it is, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, and I'll just say this is that, and that's probably been one of my biggest deficiencies as a human being most of my life, is that I have a tendency to sacrifice my time. And it never really affected me much until my kids got older.
Right.
Until
they became fun to hang out with.
Our moments to hang out with each other became more fleeting, right? And then you start looking at things like that and going, hey, will you work on this project for $100? No, I won't work on that project for $100. Because that 25 hours that you're wanting me for $100 is not worth it now.
Right.
Because I have a son and I have a daughter and I have a wife and I have all these other things that I have to take care of. And if I don't take care of them, then something else is going to have to go to the wayside. And I think that's kind of an important thing for us to remember on both sides of it. Number one, if you have that really awesome project that you need people to help you, if people are doing it for free, I mean, really thank them.
Right. Appreciation goes a long way.
It really does go a long way. And I'll just say this, and I'm not going to get too much in the weeds on it, but I have heard things recently on different projects that have been around where the time that people are putting onto some of this stuff is not appreciated. And that really bothers me. From the idea of like wanting to have that kind of film community and that creative community that we have, and we have certain people that just don't appreciate it. And that's going to happen. It's going to be out
Right.
there. But we have to be able to be big enough to kind of call each other out on it and make sure that we don't go down that road too far, because it will kill any kind of creativity out there. It will get people where they don't want to work on projects anymore. It'll get people to where they don't trust anybody anymore. And that is a detriment to all of us.
I think too, on the opposite, well, maybe the next thing is appreciate the people that worked on the project, but also complete the project so that the people that are working on it for a piece that they can use in the future, or just to be able to show their families and, hey, look at it.
Give them something to be proud about, and let them know. It's kind of like there's been multiple times where I would have to travel and I would have to go work, in hundreds of miles away. And I remember there would be some nights where I'm like, I'm just going to stay up here an extra night because I don't want to drive home yet. And I'm just going to, and there was a couple times whenever it was probably more convenient for me just to drive all the way back home. But I remember a few times you're like, well, if you're going to be gone, make the most of it.
Absolutely.
And get your work done.
And that's not just
that way when you
people.
come home,
yeah,
you can dedicate your time. And maybe that's what this whole podcast should be about. It should be about time.
Time management.
It's the time that we choose to dedicate to things.
People while they're driving and listening to this, like, wow, I didn't know I signed up for this podcast today.
Well, and I'll be very honest with you. This has been something that that both of Michelle and I have struggled with over the course of like the last 5 to 6 months. We have struggled with just time. The pandemic changed the clock. It changed it for a while, and like especially with me, because I had to. The majority of my clientele were hospitals prior to the pandemic. And so a lot of my clients, I was in the healthcare doing video projects and making commercials for them. And when the pandemic hit, they pretty much shut everything down. And so therefore I was kind of left without work, steady work. I didn't have my big elephants that were going to support me. So we ultimately kind of made a decision. I said, well, I'm going to do a lot of volunteer work. I'm going to give back. And so I did that. And I did that for about a year, and I learned a lot. We both learned a lot in that process.
Did.
We learned that just because you do it out of the goodness of your heart and you do it for free doesn't mean that it's always appreciated that way. And it's blatantly not appreciated. And it's very weird. It's a very weird concept to me. I never thought of it like that. And it really changed my mind. Not for the worse. I didn't think worse of human nature or whatever. But it's the reality. It's like if someone gives you a car away for free, are you going to take it? Right?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that car isn't worth something, but it does mean that you gave it away for free. And if you gave it away for free and you didn't ask for anything, then you really can't be upset.
Right. When people take it, I mean, I'm the type of person, I look at the car and I look at you going,
there's got to be a catch.
What's the string?
Right.
Where's the string in all this situation? But I also think there's people that don't think like that.
Yeah.
I think you also learned that you can't force your help on people.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's
some people that look at that as a free car that's got a bomb in it.
Yeah. They're like, well, I don't want a car.
I don't want that. You take it. I don't want another car to take. It's like someone giving away a free puppy, right? We had somebody ask us the other night, do you want a lab?
And I mean, I love labs.
Right. We have 2. Do you want another one? Now we've paid a lot of money for one and we paid 0 money for the other one, right?
He's our little ditch puppy.
And so somebody else comes up and says, do you want another lab? And we look at it and go, we've got this big, huge house. Why not take another one? But I don't want another mouth to feed. I hate to say it like that,
Right.
but I don't know if I necessarily want to deal with lab. What was the question I asked them? How old is it?
Right. Because lab puppies are the
Because it
worst.
makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, we have not taken another lab because we don't have
No.
time for it. But
Yeah. But
But
it's
it goes back to what we were saying, is that it's about what you're willing, the time you're willing to dedicate to something, or you put a value on things, whether you believe it or not. But if you, and I've done this in the past, I have devalued my product by giving it away for free. And I'm not the only one. And there are some of you out there that listen to this podcast that are like this, and I know who you are, and we've talked about it before. But there's a lot of us in this field that right now, especially in the independent film side of things, that we have devalued ourselves and what our abilities are because we gave it away for free and we didn't ask for anything in return. Like, hey, you're going to come help me on my project.
right.
You're going to put as much time and effort and love into my project as I put into yours. And now that's a tit for tat kind of an approach to it, or you're going to pay me a decent amount of money to be able to do this. And I think that's where we ultimately did. If we can't get the money, then we have to figure out what the
benefit is.
what the
for
benefit
them.
is for us.
And it does. And it isn't. Excuse me. It's not always money, like you said.
Yeah.
It's not always possible.
But you will get burnt out.
You will get burnt out.
We've seen that a lot in like community theater.
You will. And sometimes it's just appreciation. Sometimes it's getting paid. Sometimes it's just realizing that someone's doing something for free and understanding that they're accommodating you in that process.
Right.
You're not accommodating them.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing, though, with when you get to the production side of like what you do, is there's so much gear that goes along with being able to do what you do.
Yeah.
There is so much of an investment that goes along with it. And
well, it's impossible to get to a point, and not to toot my own horn, but it's impossible to get to a level of your business and have gear and kit and all that stuff to be able to produce what you can produce without making money. Like, I got to a point in the business where I go, okay, I have to make this much in order to feed the monkey, to have enough gear and have the latest computers that can edit 4K footage or whatever else it is out there, or to have this program to be able to, combat this or to take care of this. You have to make enough money to be able to do it. And I think people don't realize, and we've talked about this before, of, there are certain people out there that just make things look easy. And some people look at things through a lens that's easy.
right.
They're not being 100% realistic. And that's what I've, over the course of the last few months, is that's what you've basically had to go in and kind of educate people and go, yeah, this is a really hard process here. And I'm going to show you. I just had a conversation with a potential client last night, and they found a video online and they looked at it and they were like, wow, this is a really cool video. I want this video for one of my projects. And they were like, how much does this cost to do? And I shot that person very straight and I said, this is how much it costs, because pre-production is very complicated. Production is very complicated. And post-production, the edit is very complicated. And so if it's complicated, that means it takes more time and effort.
Or you have to bring in more people to subcontract certain pieces of it out because it is complicated.
And very quickly, the price tripled on the project because of the style and the look and all that they want. And thankfully, they were understanding of that. Like, they knew enough. And I mean, it's probably going to happen, which is kind of cool that project's going to happen. But I could have easily said, no, I can do it. I can do it because I want to do it. Right. But I also had to educate my potential client that this is difficult and go through the steps and talk to him about it, is that, and maybe I didn't know all of it. Maybe I didn't know what that middle section was, but it is important to like let people
Right.
know. And because there are people out there right now, and I'm going to reiterate this again, and you all need to stop it. Stop devaluing yourself. You've got to get your value of yourself in line with reality. And doing independent films gets us in the mindset of working for free. And that's tough. And it's tough. I know that there's a lot of productions out there right now that are trying to get off the ground and get going. But we are quickly eating ourselves up from the outside in.
Right.
Because we're basically cannibalizing all of our skilled people to work on these projects. Because as soon as that person's project's done, they're off the radar and they're not helping anybody else, or they're coming back and going, "Oh, well, no, I want you to pay me for this." Yeah. I mean, there's a fine line, and we have to, like, if we want to keep the film community going in the way that it's going, I see some really scary things happening, and it bothers me.
Well, I think the reality is if you can't make enough money doing that, then it becomes, like we were talking about before, the community theater project.
Yeah.
Where you're having to make choices because you work a full-time job to pay the bills. And then on your free time, which is supposed to be your time to decompress or, spend time with family, you're having to make the decision to commit to this because it's not, you're still having to do the full-time job.
Oh, yeah.
So at some point, people are going to start saying, well, it just can't be a priority for me right now.
Yeah.
This is my priority. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that. We've kind of discussed it over and over again. And
I don't think there's ever an answer to it, but it has to be continually explored all the time. You're never going to find your answer, I don't think. I mean, you're going to find what works for you, obviously, that what you can navigate with your spouse or with your schedule or things along that nature. But I think the fact of the matter is that you have to start valuing your time and your talent accordingly. And at least the thing that I see happening the quickest with a lot of people over the years, and this isn't a new thing that we've experienced, but it definitely, a lot of what's happened as of recent and the things that I've experienced as of recent have brought, it's kind of turned the lens right back on me of how I have, I'll just tell you folks, it has been weird. It has been a very weird, probably 3 or 4 weeks, because I've been called out on the carpet for a few things as far as just my mindset, and that's stuff that I hope to explore as we go down. But down this road of podcasting land or whatever. But the reality of it is that we have to kind of continually keep cross-checking and evaluating what our idea is, because if you're going to last in this field, there's a few people out here that work a 40-hour week job, and working on film set is like what I'm doing for community theater,
right.
And that's just as much work as well too. And that gets us into that whole idea is that when those productions never have a finished product,
right,
then all of that was a waste of time for people in
Right.
some ways, because they have nothing to show for it. Acting in a film that has not been produced yet, the experience was amazing, but if that film isn't done, it does me no good. I can't show it to anyone. There's nobody else that comes in on a future film project and goes, "Hey, is this guy a good actor?" I wouldn't know. I've never seen him in anything, because
Right.
all of his projects, Mickey Stone, didn't get finished. And Mickey Stone has been in. I guess that kind of rounds back to what we were talking before, because we did get off of it. Mickey's been in a ton of films locally in the Springfield, Missouri area. And there's a lot of them that have never been produced or have never seen the light of day. And that does us no good.
Right.
You're better off showing the thing that is bad than not showing it at all sometimes.
What is it? The enemy of perfect is done, or the enemy of done is perfect?
The enemy of done is perfect, yeah. Or perfect is the enemy of done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the truth. It is the truth. And hopefully what my hope is that this event that we have coming out, I want to be able to quantify that idea. I want to be able to quantify it in a way that people can understand it, people can see it, and then learn how to combat against it, because perfection is unattainable. Perfection is unattainable if you don't put the time into it,
Right.
number one. And that's time from pre-production to production to post-production.
You have to have realistic expectations for what you put into the project.
That's right.
Now I feel like I'm talking to our children. But
We don't mean to talk down to you.
It's just, it's relevant right now.
But we've been dealing with a lot of this, like all across the board in our life. We've been dealing with this,
Yeah.
not only with each other, with our children, with the things that we do in this, for a living, and the things we do for fun. We deal with this, and I think everybody does. We deal with this stuff.
I think at some point you have to get real with yourself and understand your first go around with a project is not going to be great. But sometimes just to get it done is the goal. And you have to examine when you start a project, what's the goal? Because if there is no, and sometimes people's goal may be just the experience, and that's okay, but you have to make sure that the people working on that project with you knows that that's what your goal is.
Well,
Just like if your goal is doing something else, like having an end product that goes to festivals or makes money, or maybe this is the first of another project.
Right.
Maybe it's just a way to get something out there. You have to have that goal in mind.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll just caveat this: we talked, but prior to the podcast, that we were only going to do this podcast for like 30 to 45 minutes, and this is a testament to our relationship over the last 26 years of being together. Is that we can talk no matter what. We live in the same house. Our kids are gone, and we can still sit and talk about this stuff all night. We are currently an hour and 2 minutes, but I want to say this because I'm ready to go on vacation.
Wrap her up, Bake.
I'm ready to go on vacation with you. I want to say this, and this is going to be an episode. This is not going to have any edits done at all to it. It is going, as soon as I pull it off
You
of
didn't
this.
say that was your goal at the beginning.
That was my goal. I'm going to pull it off of the recorder, and it is going to get posted. It is going to be, this is it. It's my
Mind dump.
Yeah, it's my mind up, but it's a step towards having a live podcast, which is something that's one of my goals,
Yes.
right? But I will say this, and this is something that Mickey Stone and I were having a conversation. He had called me, and we were talking. And we were talking about this idea of a film that has not been released. Mm-hmm. And one of my pushbacks on the idea of releasing a film that has not been released, my pushback was this, and I patted myself on the back because I thought this was a really good point. This was a good missile defense. Was that there is the potential. And I love that word, potential. There is the potential that film or that idea or that concept that you got to a state, right? That there was something really amazing in it. And it's something that will inspire or motivate or get someone's wheels a-turning, right? And it may not be, like you were saying, it may not be that finished state, but it may be a stage. It may be something along that arc of potential that's
Right.
there, right? And if it sits on your hard drive,
It may be somebody that wants to invest in
it
future
could be
productions.
somebody
people.
could look at it and go, that was a, yeah, somebody could look at,
Could be that.
right. Somebody could look at it and go, that was a great idea. You failed at the ending. I've got a better ending for you. And I'm willing to put money down on it.
Right.
And I'm willing to recut it. I mean, you know how many films are out there right now that have been filmed multiple times? Something like Wes Anderson, one of my favorite directors. His first film that he did, that was like the second version of it. He had filmed it already, but then he came back and somebody liked it because he sent it out to a festival. And somebody liked the potential and liked the dialogue. And they said, hey, let's put some production value behind it.
Right.
Let's invest some time and some money into it and give you some help, and we'll help you finish this project. The show Trailer Park Boys, which is a huge hit up in Canada and one of my
Right.
favorite shows, it started out the same way. And so that's where I think, and you know, we have a great event that happens in Springfield, which is the Sato 48 film competition. And I'm going to go ahead and, I mean, regardless of what you feel about the awards or, you know, the outcomes and all that kind of stuff, the fact of the matter is that exercise is a great exercise in getting a concept out of your head, and the idea of getting it out and not necessarily being able to deal with the perfection of
It
things.
gives you a deadline.
Yes, and it's a great exercise in who deals well under pressure, but it also is a great exercise in how you yourself deal with perfection. And there are people out there that fail every year because they want to be perfect in it, and they've never figured out that it's not about being perfect. It's about being done. That's the secret to Sato 48 is done. It's not perfection. It's done. But that's just my own little rant. Well, Michelle,
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show with
You're
me today.
welcome.
You are officially
I feel like I should say, oh, well, thank you, but I'm just going to tell you you're welcome.
you are officially the guest that has been on my show the most after this episode.
Oh, wow.
And in celebration of that, I'm going to take you on vacation. right now.
Hey,
So let's get the car loaded
I'll
up.
take it.
And folks, by the time you're hearing this podcast, we will already be back from vacation, and we will have had a couple of days of relaxation under our belts.
And the podcast is coming on almost 2,000 views.
It is.
So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what we can do that would incentivize people to get to the 2,000 views.
It's just time, baby.
It's just time.
It's
Make
just
it a
time.
priority, people.
Make
Listen
it
to
a
this podcast.
Yes. If I can get to 2,000 views,
That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. I don't make any money on the podcast, so I can't afford to do anything super crazy, but I do have a really cool event that's coming up that I hope that I can use that as a way to show my appreciation.
Maybe if we get to 2,000 views, you will promise you have to announce on the next podcast.
I have to announce it on the next podcast, or I'm going to lose friends if I don't.
All right.
All right. Thank you for being on the show once again.
You're welcome.
I love you.
I love you too.
You have been listening to the Bravo Creative Podcast. Analysis of your biometrics have been compiled and calculated. You are now a minuscule part of the collective. Enjoy the rest of your pitiful day.